From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Lots of things happening in the news here over the weekend and late last week. I'm interested in this Supreme Court story, and not to get overly optimistic about it, but just the very fact that the Democrats in the House have proposed this bill to expand the Supreme Court from 9 justices to 13. Now, of course, it's premature to get excited, but here's why I am excited. And you and I have spoken about this before. Just the very fact that ideas like this are being seriously proposed in the Congress of the United States. That's how things get done. Sometimes they happen quickly, sometimes they happen over great lengths of time, sometimes they don't happen at all, but at least if any progress is going to be made, we have to have steps like this. It wasn't until now, really, that this sort of idea was only being bandied about in fringe publications. It didn't even make the mainstream news. No serious member of Congress with any kind of clout had anything to say about it. Now we have, the co-sponsors. Representative Jerrold Nadler, a veteran of the House, chair of the House Judiciary Committee. He's one of the co-sponsors. Ed Markey of Massachusetts, a liberal who's really has earned our respect. I know. You can't get too excited about Democrats in Congress. Yes, I know. But Ed Markey is one of the good guys. At least we're on the right path, and it's important. So let me read from NPR's reporting on this. Liberal congressional Democrats unveiled a proposal Thursday to expand the number of seats on the U.S. Supreme Court from 9 to 13, a move Republicans have blasted as, quote, court packing, and which has almost no chance of being voted on after House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said she has no plans to bring it to the floor. Okay, so that's the bad news. We've been praising Nancy Pelosi for the bills she is bringing to the floor. We've been praising her lately. Okay, we haven't got her yet on this one. That's all right. Again, opening shots. Continuing here. The measure, the Judiciary Act of 2021, is being co-sponsored by Representatives Jerrold Nadler, chair of the House Judiciary Committee, Hank Johnson of Georgia, Mondaire Jones of New York. Oh, see there? There's another thing, Mondaire Jones. He's one of these new members that are genuinely progressive. And we have to continue with this trend. With each 2-year cycle, we got to chip away and get a few more genuine progressives on that floor of the House. Mondaire Jones is one of them. And Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts, as mentioned. We are not packing the Supreme Court. We are unpacking it, Nadler said at a news conference in front of the Supreme Court. In a statement, Nadler, a congressman from New York, said the bill would, quote, restore balance to the nation's highest court after 4 years of norm-breaking actions by Republicans led to its current composition. And, of course, we know what that is. The nomination of Merrick Garland by Barack Obama was blocked, completely denied by the Republican majority, and Mitch McConnell specifically. Completely out of the norm. So it gave the Orange Menace an extra nominee. And then while voting had already begun in the 2020 election, they decided to ram through Amy Coney Barrett. So there are 2 seats on the court that were literally stolen from the Democrats. So that's what they're talking about. Yeah. Any charge by the Republicans that Democrats are, quote, packing the court is, unfounded. The number 9, there's nothing special about it. The number of justices on the court has changed over the years. It's gone back and forth. There's nothing sacred about the number 9. Reading again, some scholars argue that Congress could also pass legislation limiting the number of years a justice could serve, but the Constitution says that the Supreme Court justices and other federal judges shall hold their offices during good behavior. and that has long been interpreted to mean they cannot be removed except by impeachment by the House of Representatives and conviction by the Senate. Changing that would seem to require a constitutional amendment, which requires approval by 2/3 of the House and Senate and 3/4 of the states. So the expansion bill, requiring only a simple majority of both chambers, is an easier way to go. So that gets into other reform, and there's room for plenty of reform. And yes, the term limits does get constitutionally sticky, but from my reading of this, other proposals of reform, much of it is certainly within the realm of Congress itself to apply without constitutional challenge. Now, speaking of this term limit thing, somebody took a poll recently. Let me get that up here. Let's see. It's from, I'm looking at Business Insider right now. Oh, yeah, they used to be called Business Insider. Now they're just Insider. Anyway, their headline is, New Poll Indicates Most Americans Want to End Lifetime Appointments for Supreme Court Justices. So, if you can cross the constitutional barrier, what we do know is that Americans are for it. A Reuters Ipsos national opinion poll conducted in mid-April showed that 63% of respondents supported term limits for Supreme Court justices. Only 22% supported lifetime appointments as it currently stands. The poll also showed that 38% of respondents supported an expansion of the court from 9 to 13 members, while 42% opposed the idea. So we like to brag around here about the big numbers. We don't have big numbers on this issue. We brag about Medicare for all and sensible gun reform and all sorts of things. The American people are for, in great numbers, they favor those things and others. The Bernie agenda, basically, student debt forgiveness, just go on down the list, very popular with the American people. A quick reminder, we like to say around here, the American people aren't nearly as divided as they want us to think. They meaning the media who like to stir up controversy and politicians who are speaking only to suit their own needs. When it just comes down to the issues, you take away the labels, you ask Americans what they actually think. They're a pretty progressive bunch, by and large. We have the numbers. Well, we don't have the numbers on this one, but that's kind of how things start. Again, getting back to what I opened with, these sorts of ideas have to start somewhere. They have to get the attention of people with power. Those people with power have to voice these issues, take them out of the fringe area, make them palatable to others, and then you get a little bit of press, you get a little bit of exposure. The American people begin to understand what you're actually talking about, and those numbers rise. So this 38% of Americans polled who do not support an expansion of the court from 9 to 13, that's the number today. That's the lowest number I believe we'll see on this issue. I believe that number will rise because that's how it goes. It's how it went with same-sex marriage. It's how it went with legal weed. It starts down in the teens, 20s, and 30s, and it slowly rises, and you get some attention, and we get educated. And oh, okay, yeah, well, of course we should have Medicare for all. There's another one. In great numbers, Americans want Medicare for all because now they have some understanding as to what it means. You got to have this steady torrent of media attention, of legitimate actors on the national stage making some noise, and those numbers change. People now understand because of the many articles and segments on news programs that most other so-called civilized countries pay a fraction of what we pay for their health systems. Their outcomes are better, and then it becomes obvious. Well, yeah. So we don't have the numbers on this yet, but we will on the court. And the very fact, and this gets into the bigger problem, the big picture problem with the current minority rule in America. The number we like to repeat around here is 41 million. That's how many Americans are represented by Democratic senators. That's how many more Americans represented by Democratic senators than are represented by Republican senators. And it's a 50-50 split in the Senate. So through gerrymandering and through this very outdated system of the Senate and the Electoral College, we wind up with minority rule, which we had, of course. We had a Republican-ruled Senate. We had a Republican president. And as a result, now, a federal judiciary that is entirely screwy. It completely misrepresents the United States. Because it's not only the Supreme Court, which has a 6-3 advantage, basically minority rule. There's just nothing else can be said. That's what it is. It's minority rule. A 6-3 advantage for the minority, ultra-conservatives. And then we get these weird interpretations of so-called religious freedom, and we have pro-business rulings, anti-immigrant rulings, anti-people of color and LGBTQ rulings. And this goes throughout the judiciary. 2/3 of federal judges are in their seats because of this rigged minority rule system. So any reform to correct that is certainly appropriate, and it can be labeled by the Republicans as a power grab by the Democrats, and I suppose maybe it is, but if it is, it's a grab to make things right. And when you're talking about the entire federal judiciary, this is a big fix that needs to happen. It's not going to happen overnight. Now, in a very much related topic, D.C. statehood. There again, only in the back pages of radical publications. Nobody would take this seriously. And here we go. House committee advances D.C. statehood bill along party line vote. Reading, believe it or not, Fox News, because they're concerned about this. They don't want it. But here's what they write. A panel of House Democrats advanced legislation Wednesday to make Washington, D.C. the 51st state in the Union after hours-long debate over the constitutionality of the plan and the political ramifications of a newly minted blue state. Yeah, there you can tell it's Fox. The House Oversight Committee voted 25-19 in a party line vote to support statehood and to send the bill to a full vote of the House next week. No Republican backed the measure, no kidding. Backed by D.C. residents, Mayor Muriel Bowser and D.C. Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton, supporters of statehood argued it's long overdue to end the taxation of Washingtonians without federal government representation. Congress can no longer exclude D.C. residents from the democratic process, forcing residents to watch from the sideline as Congress votes on laws that affect the nation or votes even on the laws of the duly elected D.C. government, Norton said Wednesday. So there you go. Another perfect example of the current House, Democrats in the House, advancing ideas that have been around for a long time, but nobody had the guts, nobody had the nerve to move them forward. And even if they fail, it couldn't be more important. I'm telling you guys, you got to be happy about this. We often point to the Bernie agenda from 2016. Free college tuition, student loan debt, minimum wage, minimum living wage, breaking up the banks, Medicare for all. The whole Bernie agenda. They were pipe dreams just a few short years ago. In the 2016 primary season, as he's introducing all of his ideas, and he's gaining momentum and damn near beat Hillary, and he would have if not for the very powerful Democratic establishment. But Bernie brought these crazy ideas, and then just a couple short years later, here they are, mainstream ideas, in the mainstream, and with great, great numbers from the pollsters when they ask Americans about them. So, Supreme Court reform, D.C. statehood, making great, great strides, way beyond the fringe, now very certainly and rapidly getting into the bloodstream of mainstream American politics. It's pretty great. It's pretty great. By the way, if I haven't been clear about it, both with expansion of the court and D.C. statehood, I'm strongly in favor of both. D.C. statehood, I think it's just a no-brainer for obvious reasons. I mean, they're citizens of the United States. They need to have the same rights. D.C.'s population is larger than Vermont. It's larger than Wyoming. And it's pretty much comparable to several other states, including Delaware, Alaska, others. It's an historically black city. Black people make up 47% of the population. In fact, it's a minority-majority or majority-minority, whatever they call it. Whites are 41%, Asians 4, Hispanic 11. So whites are the minority in Washington, D.C. So there again, it's a correction, a badly needed correction. Let's see, what am I looking at here? I've got some numbers from statehood.dc.gov. Listen to this. The average black American voting power is only 75% as much representation as the average white American in the Senate. Because obviously, small states, Wyoming, Alaska, others, have 2 senators. California, New York also have 2 senators. Illinois has 2 senators with the great city of Chicago. And Delaware has 2 senators. So it's crazy. 75%. So a black person's political power, voting power, is 75% of the average white American. So D.C. statehood would be a step in the direction of correcting that imbalance. There again, Republicans claim power grab. Well, it is a power grab, but 100% entirely justified. It's grabbing power that has been stolen, that has been denied for decades, for centuries. So until we can make some really big progress, and now we're talking the huge goals of Senate reform and Electoral College reform. Those are big goals. We can take steps, and statehood is certainly right there. If I'm not mistaken, I think most Puerto Ricans who live on the island favor statehood for Puerto Rico. Others favor independence. There's been some talk, but this remains on the fringe of more radical thought, and that's the idea of splitting up California, which I'll embrace that. I would love to see California split up into 3 separate states. That seems about right to me. They've gotten just way too big. And with that, then, 4 more senators. Call it a power grab if you want. Again, I think it's just an absolutely justified correction. The voting power of whites over blacks, the voting powers of small states over large states, is completely out of whack. So just for the really fundamental reasons, just because people ought to be represented, that old-fashioned idea of democracy, just on that alone, D.C. ought to be a state. But there are also these really good corrective measures that happen as well. So good for you, Congress. Good for you. House Committee advances the D.C. statehood bill. And they're also working on this plan to expand the size of the Supreme Court. Loving it. Loving this stuff. And a quick reminder, just because I feel it's necessary, this is happening because of progressives. It's happening because of the left wing of the Democratic Party, and that's the only way these things will advance. Only way. You're only going to get opposition from the Republicans, obviously, and you're not going to get much help from the centrists unless and until they see the writing on the wall, and then they feel they have no choice. So you just got to win, baby. You just got to win. You got to rack up some wins. And then look at the other side for a minute. For several weeks there, they had nothing, the Republicans. It was literally defending the January 6th insurrectionists as though they were defense lawyers. And then they went off on the whole Dr. Seuss thing and the Mr. Potato Head thing and the cancel culture. They just got nothing. And now what they've landed on is this horrible position on transgender kids especially. Transgender generally. They're trying to pass laws all over the country along with their anti-voter laws. They're trying to drum up anti-transgender laws all over the place. I mean, talk about a contrast here between the two parties. My God. I think the most laughable, if you could laugh at this, and I can't because it's too disturbing, but the most absurd of their claims is that they're so concerned about these poor girl athletes, girls in high school especially. They're so concerned that transgender girls assigned male at birth are going to steal all of their trophies, and they will destroy girls' sports as we know them. And these poor girls will be robbed of their rights. It's so insane on so many levels. But the absurd part is, When has the Republican Party been the slightest bit concerned with any women's or girls' issue? I challenge you. Name one girls' or women's issue that the Republicans put front and center. I'll wait. It's crickets. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. As a matter of fact, it's just the opposite. They want to restrict the rights of women. They want to legislate their bodies. They want to intervene on their own healthcare decisions. So suddenly, out of nowhere, out of this long-standing record in opposition to women and girls on every front, suddenly their biggest concern in all of this world is that these poor young girl track athletes and tennis players and whatever are going to be overrun by an army, by this horde of transgender girls. Well, this faux concern is pretty obvious. It's just all about hate and discrimination. That's all the Republicans are ever about. Not to mention the fact that it's just completely unfounded. There's no reason to be concerned about such things. Of all the many benefits of young people in sports, there's no reason in this world to deny transgender girls. The girls themselves will tell you that especially once they begin the hormone therapy and they start transitioning, their physical skills will transition right along with them. I've heard girls being interviewed on that very thing. The Republicans haven't got a single leg to stand on. No reputable psychologists will stand with them. No reputable researcher of any kind. In fact, looking at Scientific American right now, headline, Gender-affirming healthcare should be a right, not a crime. Some states are going to war against young transgender people. Yeah, the interview I'm thinking of I saw recently, the girl is pointing out that, well, Republicans are going to court and passing laws restricting young people from seeking gender-affirming health care, and then, on the other hand, not allowing them to compete with birth-assigned females because somehow they've got this physical advantage. Well, they wouldn't have the physical advantage if they would let them get the health care they needed in the first place. So I don't know if I said that very clearly. Did you get that? Republicans, as usual, are creating the problems and then passing laws to solve them. Yeah, they're just like a few years ago when it was all about stamping out public unions. The Republicans, they all get on the same page. They get ALEC to write up some laws. They get together. Boy, they're always coordinated. A couple of summers ago, it was these really draconian, horrible anti-abortion laws and anti-birth control laws. Very recently, it's the anti-voter laws, and that continues. And now there's these string of anti-trans laws all around the country in all these different states. Reading from Scientific American. These laws are out of sync with the recommendations of the American Medical Association, the Endocrine Society, the Pediatric Endocrine Society, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Psychiatric Association, and the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, who all agree that gender-affirmative treatments are an important option for transgender youth. Now, for many Americans, this is relatively new, meaning many Americans don't know the simple facts on this. You don't have to be an expert. You don't need hours of research. You just need a little bit of reading from highly reputable sources. And it's one of those things like climate change and others that are, whether or not the earth is flat. There's nothing controversial about this. There is consensus among all experts in the field that gender dysphoria is real. It's treatable. There's nothing moral about it. It is certainly not just a lifestyle decision. And that's sort of the basis of these ridiculous laws being proposed. Well, a boy can just pretend to be a girl and win all the trophies, as if that would happen. But that's not how it works. So we just have to battle the ignorance on this. And please, if you're still having doubts about this, there's really nothing to doubt. This is right along there with climate change and the earth is round. Transgender rights, including their health rights and the complete and unquestionable unqualified right of a transgender girl to run track on her high school team. There's nothing controversial about any of this. It's not tricky. There's nothing to debate. It's bigots creating a problem where none exists and passing bigoted laws. Yeah, they're so concerned. They're so concerned with girls. What a joke. ACLU.org. Doctors agree. Gender-affirming care is life-saving care. Arkansas has become the first state to pass a bill banning health care for transgender youth, and 16 other states have introduced similar legislation. God bless America. Medical experts agree. Gender-affirming care is medically necessary care that can be life-saving for transgender youth. Medical decisions belong to trans youth, their parents, and their doctors. Yet, politicians are trying to come between trans youth and the care they need. In 2020, 15 states introduced legislation that would ban, and in some instances criminalize, access to health care for transgender youth. The Arkansas legislature passed such a bill into law on March 29 of this year, and 16 other states introduced similar legislation. So if you somehow got it into your head, if they've somehow convinced you that this is in any way controversial or something to be debated, it's not. This is just hate. It's all it is. I don't debate hate. The facts are clear. The experts are in 100% agreement. There is full consensus on this. The right-wing talkers can always frame it in, well, I'm just asking the question. Yeah, no. This is just who the Republicans are now. Anti-woman, anti-LGBTQ, white supremacist. This is all they are right now. But I just want to leave today on kind of an optimistic note. We've got the numbers on all the important progressive issues. We have the approval of the American people. We've got the science on our side. We've got the politics on our side regarding Supreme Court reform and D.C. statehood, these long-needed corrections of basic fairness of democracy. That's on our side. So, sure, you're going to hear tons of blowback from the bigots, from the racists, from the fascists, from the white supremacists. Yeah. And I'm not expecting overnight wins, but I'm feeling generally pretty good today. We're on the right side of the science. We're on the right side of democracy. We're on the right side of justice. We're on the right side of history. I'm feeling pretty confident about that. I don't think I have to qualify that statement at all. I feel really pretty certain. Court reform, D.C. statehood, political reform that corrects the terrible imbalance of power, transgender rights. Yeah. Feeling a bit unwavering about all of these today as we speak. And if you feel you're on the fence about any of this, Google it up, see what the experts are saying. I have full confidence that if you are a moderately intelligent person with a modicum of empathy in your soul, I feel pretty confident you're going to come down on the right side of these issues. All right. Well, that'll do it for today. We'll talk to you tomorrow. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.